On the day my wife gave birth to the child of her terminally ill first love, my father-in-law and mother-in-law had 10 thugs stationed outside the delivery room, but even when it was all over, I didn't cause any trouble. My mother-in-law sat by Laura's side, holding her hand with a sigh. "Laura, don't worry. As long as we're here, we won't let him get anywhere near you. Your dad even brought people to guard the hospital entrance," she added. "If he dares try to stop you from giving birth, we'll call the police." Laura, pale, weak, and exhausted, nodded slightly, but I noticed how she still, almost instinctively, glanced toward the elevator. What she saw was only emptiness. Only then did she finally let out a sigh of relief. She couldn't understand me. All I'd wanted was to help her leave a legacy for her true love. Why couldn't I just understand her? When she looked at the nurse cradling the crying newborn, she smiled content, almost at peace. She thought that if I came to visit her tomorrow, maybe she'd forgive me for all our past arguments. Maybe she'd even let me be the child's father, but what she didn't know was that I had already submitted my report to the United Nations. 7 days later, I would give up my nationality, become a stateless doctor, and never return. Chapter 1. The day Laura left the confinement center, I had just finished my shift at the hospital. As I walked toward the door, I could already hear the sounds of laughter and joy coming from inside. This child is so beautiful. Those big eyes are definitely her father's best feature, my mother-in-law said, beaming as she played with the baby in her arms. James emerged from the kitchen, carrying a steaming bowl of chicken soup. "I made this myself," he told Laura gently. "You're still weak. You need to nourish your body." He sat beside her on the bed, feeding her with the kind of care and warmth that made the room feel like a family portrait. My father-in-law was shaking a rattle for the baby, grinning so wide it seemed his mouth couldn't close. "This child is really likable, just like her father," he said. "Fortunately, it's not that silent, Claude. Otherwise, having a dad who's a doctor would be such a headache." My grip on the door handle tightened. I remembered the first time I met my father-in-law. He had patted my shoulder and said that being a doctor was an honor for the whole family. He told me he had once been a doctor himself, and that if it hadn't been for an injury from a medical dispute, he would never have retired early. But now he was saying that doctors didn't deserve a family. I had only been gone for a single year for further studies, and somehow this family had already decided they couldn't tolerate me anymore. Lowering my head, I forced a bitter smile. Laura and I had been married for 3 years. She always said she didn't want children, and I respected that childbirth could be dangerous, and I never pressured her. I still remembered the day I left for my studies abroad. She had cried her eyes out, saying she'd miss me. We spoke every single day after that, sharing our lives as if we'd never been apart. Even our colleagues would joke that despite being married for years, we were still like a young couple in love. But a month ago, when I finally took leave to come back home, I found her, belly swollen, standing beside her first love. James's voice pulled me back to the present. "Claude, when did you get back? Why are you just standing at the door?" The others turned to look at me. When my father-in-law spotted the resignation letter in my hand, his face darkened. "How did I ever let you marry my daughter? What a disaster. Now you're quitting your job? Planning to live off us old folks? Is this how you call yourself a husband?" My mother-in-law jumped in immediately. "You quit your job? You couldn't even keep your golden position. And now what? If you don't work, how will this family survive? Laura's health is fragile, and the baby needs money. Are you planning to let the 3 of us starve?" I let out a humorless laugh. "Whoever's wife and child it is, it's their responsibility to support them." "Claude, what did you just say? Do you have no sense of responsibility at all?" Laura's eyes turned red. "If James hadn't saved me from the car accident 3 years ago, I would have died. His parents are gone, and now he's been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Soon, no one will even remember him. Why do you always target him? Do you think I'm that kind of dirty, vile woman in your heart?" James turned to her, his eyes full of pain, gently soothing her before looking back at me. "Claude, just say less. I know this is my fault. I promise I'll never show up in your life again, but please don't let me ruin your relationship with Laura, all right?" I looked at the 4 of them united, standing together like a real family, and I almost laughed out loud. Then Laura's voice cut through the air, cold and sharp. "Claude, my patience has limits. If you ever target James again, don't bother coming back to this house. If you want to stay married to me, you'd better keep quiet." Next week, at the full-month celebration, I'll announce in front of all our relatives and friends that you are the father of this child. Next week, I glanced at the sleeping baby in the stroller. By then, I would already be on my way abroad. Still, before I left, I wouldn't mind giving them an unforgettable surprise. Keeping my expression calm, I nodded. Okay, chapter 2 after that. I didn't care about their reactions. I turned around and went straight to the bedroom to pack my things. Since I had already decided to leave for good, I didn't want to leave even a trace of myself behind. From the living room came the sounds of laughter and joy. My hands froze for a moment as I folded my clothes. James, I want to give the child your surname. That way, even if he calls someone else Dad in the future, he'll always remember you're his real father. I couldn't see her face, but I could easily imagine the deep affection in Laura's eyes as she said that. My own heart was already shredded, covered in wounds. My mind went back to the day I returned home last month. I had rushed back, still holding a souvenir I'd bought for her abroad, but when I reached the door, I saw Laura and James returning from a walk hand in hand. Laura's face was pale with fear. James, on the other hand, looked straight at me with mild confusion, as if wondering whether I had come to the wrong house. I didn't say a word. My eyes were fixed on Laura's rounded belly. I had been gone for 11 months, and my wife was pregnant. No matter how I tried, I couldn't lie to myself. This child wasn't mine. Laura stepped in quickly, introducing me. This is my husband, Claude. I thought James would back off after hearing that. But instead, like the man of the house, he invited me in to sit. As we brushed past each other, he leaned close enough for only me to hear. I heard you're quite a bit older than me. Then I'll call you Big Brother since the child in your wife's belly is mine. The rage in my chest erupted. I punched him in the face. I completely lost my self-control. The longing I'd carried through 11 months apart turned into raw fury. If I'd had a knife in my hand, I might have killed them both. The neighbors heard the noise and called the police. We were all taken to the station, but since it was a domestic matter, the police couldn't interfere and let us go home. When we got back, my in-laws, who had rushed over after hearing what happened, didn't even ask me what had gone on. They immediately began yelling at me, scolding me for causing such a scene, for embarrassing them in front of the neighbors. They accused me of wasting all those years of education, told me I should never have raised my hand to anyone, and threatened that if anything else happened, they'd never let me off. It turned out they had known about Laura and James all along and had even supported their relationship. In just 1 year, James had become the perfect son-in-law in their eyes, and me, I'd been the fool in the dark. The entire time, all I felt now was bitterness. My heart was unbearably heavy with pain. Laura walked toward me unsteadily, reaching for my hand as if to persuade me. I never meant to betray you, she said quietly. James is in poor health. The doctor says he only has 6 months to live. I couldn't bear to watch him die without leaving behind a legacy. I thought about telling you before, she continued, but you were abroad, and I didn't want to trouble you or interrupt your studies. I decided to wait until you came back to talk about it. She looked at me with an almost hopeful gaze. If you're willing, could we raise this child together? Having a child is supposed to be one of the biggest decisions a couple can make. But from her lips, it sounded casual, like she was asking me to go out for a walk. I packed the last of my clothes into the suitcase just as my mother-in-law pushed open the door. She glanced at the suitcase at my feet, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Since you've been gone, I've let James sleep in your room, she said matter-of-factly. The study has been turned into a nursery now. Tonight, you'll have to make do and sleep in the living room. Or you could stay at a hotel. I was exhausted, too tired to bother looking for a hotel, so I simply nodded and prepared to settle on the couch for the night. But in the middle of the night, the sound of a baby crying drifted from the bedroom. I rolled over, ready to put in my earplugs, when I heard Laura's voice complaining, "You need to do something about the baby, or he'll just keep crying." "You're my baby," James's voice replied lazily. "Just take care of it. Let him cry a little longer, it helps develop his lungs." Laura laughed softly. "You're so annoying." Then the bed began to creak. I yanked the blanket over my head, trying to block out the unbearable sounds. But as soon as I closed my eyes, an image of Laura from the early days flashed in my mind, the day she first confessed to me. She'd been So pure, so beautiful. Her heart and her eyes filled only with me, but that woman no longer existed. Chapter 3. I drifted through the night in a daze, and by dawn, I was already leaving the house with my suitcase in hand. First, I went to the authorities to deregister my household registration. Then I handled the paperwork for leaving the country. Because I had government-approved documents, everything went smoothly, and the staff didn't ask many questions. Just as I was about to leave, the clerk called me back and handed me a piece of fruit candy. "May your wishes come true," she said. I gave her a reassuring smile before leaving, then headed to a nearby hotel to drop off my luggage. I was just about to head out for something to eat when I unexpectedly ran into Laura, James, and their 2 children. James was dressed in a custom-tailored Armani suit, looking healthy and radiant, nothing like a man supposedly on the verge of death. "Claude," he called out cheerfully, "I thought I saw you from a distance just now, but Laura said it couldn't possibly be you here." His eyes landed on the recruitment flyer in my hand, and a knowing smile tugged at his lips. "So, you're out here looking for a job? With your frail body, won't you just suffer carrying bricks on a construction site?" I didn't answer. The flyer had been given to me moments earlier by a young girl on the street. I'd taken it only because I'd seen her handing them out in the cold. When I stayed silent, simply tightening my grip on the flyer, his laugh grew more mocking. "If you'd said earlier you were looking for a job, maybe I could have helped. We're all family, right? If you're doing well, Laura's future will be more secure, and I could rest easy." My silence must have seemed like agreement, because Laura, who'd looked confused at first, suddenly changed. Her frown deepened, and her eyes filled with contempt. "What's there to introduce?" she scoffed. "He chose to quit a perfectly good doctor's job. Now, even if he starves on the streets, he doesn't deserve anyone's sympathy. Claude, you really have no sense of responsibility. Do you think this will make me give up the child?" I looked at her face, so familiar, yet so unfamiliar now. I remembered when we first got married, when I'd considered resigning because of the intense competition at the hospital. Laura had held me in her arms, gently patting my back as she whispered, "We are one. No matter what decision you make, I'll support you. Resigning isn't a big deal. I believe our future will shine. And husband, I'll always be by your side." But that woman, the one who promised to stay with me through anything, now stood by and watched another man humiliate me. She'd forgotten the words she once said, forgotten the love we once shared. Even my in-laws joined in, shaking their heads in disappointment. "I must have been blind," my father-in-law said. "How could I have trusted you with my daughter's future happiness? Luckily, we're still alive. If we weren't here, who knows how you'd torture our daughter after we're gone." There. Words grew more and more exaggerated, and passers-by began to stop and glance at us. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. I was about to speak when James suddenly stepped forward. "We're going to take a family portrait," he said casually. "Claude, why don't you join us? In the future, I'll rely on you to help take care of Laura and the child." Laura immediately cut him off with a sneer. "Look at his shabby appearance. If he's in the photo, it'll only lower our family's image." She turned and headed toward the photography studio, urging James to follow. "Since that's the case, we'll leave first. Don't let us delay you from finding a job." James patted my shoulder meaningfully before walking away. I watched them go, feeling nothing anymore. To outsiders, they looked like the perfect, harmonious family. If this was what Laura wanted, then maybe there was nothing wrong with me stepping aside and letting go. Chapter 4. 3 days before my departure, I received a message from the hospital director. He told me the specialist I'd asked him to contact was currently in the country attending a forum and could check my father-in-law's coronary artery condition. My father-in-law had suffered from heart problems for years. Several years ago, he'd even been rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. While I'd been abroad, I'd gathered relevant medical cases with the help of my colleagues. After all, despite everything, we still had a bond from years past. I thought if I helped him this once, I'd owe them nothing. But when I told him I wanted to take him to the hospital, his face immediately darkened. "Why go to the hospital? Do you wish me dead? I already had heart bypass surgery, and it was successful. What's there to check? There's a top heart specialist here right now," I explained. "You could see him, maybe take preventative measures for the future." Before I could finish, he hurled his water cup at me. "You're full of sweet talk. Do you think you can just call a top expert as an unemployed man? All you do is boast. Remember James? He stayed up late to help me book an appointment with an expert. Where were you then? He kept comparing me to James, making it clear, no matter what I did, it was wrong. No matter how I tried, I'd never be as good as James in their eyes. I could only smile bitterly. Since you don't want to go, forget it, let it go. I was just meddling in things that didn't concern me anymore. Soon, it was the day of the baby's full moon celebration. I arrived late to find the banquet hall full of relatives, many whose names I couldn't even remember. For a moment, I just stood there, dazed. The celebration was grander than my own wedding with Laura. At the entrance, a large family portrait of the 5 of them was on display, from beginning to end. I was just a joke. When the guests noticed me, they immediately began whispering. I didn't need to hear their words to guess their meaning. My aunt came over and grabbed my arm with a warm smile. "Claude, when did you come back? Laura never mentioned it at all. I heard you just returned from studying abroad and are about to be promoted to chief physician at the hospital. Your future looks so bright." I didn't answer, just nodded politely, but in their eyes, I saw the disdain. After all, I wasn't in the family portrait, and the man who'd stood beside Laura through all this wasn't me. Nearby, someone who clearly knew the whole story leaned over and whispered. I pointed toward the man who was feeding Laura dessert and asked, "Claude, who's this guy? I didn't know you had a younger brother." I gave a faint smile. "That's Laura's new husband." The aunts, always hungry for gossip, immediately widened their eyes, then huddled together, whispering even more excitedly. Since Laura's own family didn't seem to care, why should I bother covering up the truth for them? Just then, Laura stepped up to the stage, taking the microphone. "I'm so happy that everyone could join us today for my son's full moon celebration," she began. "Before this, I never thought I'd ever become a mother. I always felt like I couldn't be good at playing that role. But the moment I heard my baby cry in the delivery room, I realized just how powerful a mother's love really is." Her voice grew passionate, as if she might burst into tears from her own words. My aunt, standing next to me, suddenly shouted, "Let the baby's father say a few words." "Where is the father?" The whole banquet hall froze, every eye shifted between James and me. The answer was already obvious, but my aunt seemed to be waiting for Laura to admit it herself. I met Laura's gaze and slowly walked toward the stage. She looked stunned as I took the microphone from her hand. "What are you doing?" "I'm warning you, don't say anything reckless. Otherwise, we're not done," she whispered urgently, pulling at my sleeve, but I didn't even glance at her. I pulled my hand away. If she hadn't done anything wrong, why would she be so afraid of me knocking on the door of truth? I spoke calmly into the microphone. "First, I want to thank everyone for coming to today's full moon celebration. Many of you here witnessed Laura and me walking into the marriage hall together. After our wedding, I always cherished your blessings. But when you came in earlier, you must have noticed the family portrait at the entrance." Laura's expression changed instantly. She scowled and rushed toward me, trying to grab the microphone back. I dodged and tightened my grip on it. To be honest, I was shocked when I saw it too. But what shocked me even more was that after spending a year abroad, I came back to find my supposedly childless wife already 8 months pregnant. I turned to her directly. "I can't swallow this. Laura, let's get a divorce." I pulled a divorce agreement from my bag, something I had prepared long ago, and tossed it forcefully at her feet. I had wanted to do this ever since I saw her getting close to James. Laura's face turned pale. She tried to take the microphone again, hoping to calm the chaos, but at the same time, she reached for my arm, trying to explain herself. "Claude, why can't you just let it go? Haven't I told you? As long as you stop bringing it up, the 3 of us can still have a good life together from now on." 3 people. In her version of a 3-person family, I was the unwanted one, and honestly, I didn't want to deceive myself any longer. "Sign it. There's nothing left to say between us. I wish you both happiness." She shook her head violently. "I won't sign it. I don't agree to the divorce, Claude. Don't even think about it." When I first contacted my lawyer to draft the agreement, he told me I could legally make her leave with nothing. After all, she had openly had a child with another man during our marriage that was undeniable evidence of infidelity, but gathering all the evidence and waiting for a court verdict would take too long. I was about to leave the country, and no matter how much money I had, there would be nowhere to spend it where I was going. So I simply took my rightful share of the property and told my lawyer to donate everything else to hope schools in poor mountain areas. After I left, there was nothing more to discuss with Laura. I glanced at the chaotic scene. then turned to walk away, but Laura, unwilling to accept it, handed the baby to her father and ran after me. Before she could take more than a few steps, James suddenly clutched his chest, gasping for air. Laura, I feel terrible. Maybe it's all the stress earlier. I think I'm really close to dying. James, are you okay? Hold on, I'll take you to the hospital right now. She could only watch as I walked away with firm steps, telling herself that once everything settled down, she'd sit me down for a proper talk. In her mind, as long as she didn't agree to the divorce, our relationship would never truly end. That thought gave her some comfort. The group rushed James to the hospital, but on the way, Laura's father suddenly had a spike in heart rate from the emotional stress. Laura nearly burst into tears, not knowing who to help first, just as her father was about to be wheeled into the operating room. They ran into the hospital director and the most authoritative heart specialist in the field. At that moment, Laura forgot everything else. She rushed forward and knelt in front of the director. Please, save my father. His condition is really critical. There was a man named James who helped me get an appointment with you before. Do you remember him? The expert studied her for a long moment before asking cautiously, You're Claude's wife, right? He contacted me through the director earlier, hoping I could check on his father-in-law's condition. I even saw your photo on his phone, and I praised him for being so filial. But a couple of days ago, he told me it was no longer necessary. What's going on now? Laura froze. Confusion and shock filled her eyes. They had always believed I had no way of reaching top-tier doctors, assuming everything was arranged by James. Now they realized they had misunderstood me all along. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. The director pulled her aside and, with regret, said, I'm very sorry, Miss Laura. We're about to board a flight to the U.S. for a conference, so we can't personally do the surgery. But rest assured, our medical team here is the best in the city. We'll do everything we can to save your father. Then both of them left. Later, I heard from the director what had happened. Laura knelt outside the operating room while her mother, full of regret, scolded her. I always said even if Claude was shameless, he wouldn't joke about something like this. You didn't believe me. And now look, if anything happens to your father, you'll be the one responsible. Her furious yelling made the baby in her arms cry loudly. Frustrated, my mother-in-law placed the child down on a nearby plastic chair. Stop crying. You cry all day long. If I didn't know any better, I'd think I gave birth to a little emperor. But Laura wasn't listening anymore. She slowly pulled out her phone, thinking of calling me. Maybe now I was the only one who could reach the expert for her father's surgery. But when she tried, the call wouldn't go through. Why then? I was already on a plane heading abroad. I rested my head against the window, watching the scenery outside fade until the plane's inertia lifted us into the blue sky. An odd sense of unreality washed over me. From that moment on, I no longer had a nationality. I belonged to the world. After more than 10 hours in the air, my companion and I were exhausted when we finally landed. The scene here was nothing like the peaceful atmosphere in China. This place was full of war and armed soldiers, where one wrong step could mean death. While we rested in the car, our team leader briefed us on the situation and handed each of us a gun. Saving lives is important, he said, but more important than the mission itself is your own life. His words struck deep. I thought back to the years I'd spent with Laura, treating her as if she were my entire world. Back then, wasn't she more important to me than my own life? Soon, we reached our destination. On the muddy road, many wounded people sat on the ground, their arms and legs covered in bloody injuries. This area had just been bombed. These people, horrifying as their wounds looked, were actually the least seriously injured. The operating room was already full, so they were placed outside on the roadside. I pushed away every other thought and rushed to help bandage them. That was only the beginning. For the next few months, every day reshaped my worldview. More importantly, it strengthened my resolve. I never once regretted coming here or becoming a doctor without borders. One afternoon, a colleague came rushing in, out of breath, saying someone was looking for me. I thought it was just another patient and was about to step outside when my colleague added, I think it's someone from back home, a woman. My step faltered slightly, and Laura's face immediately flashed in my mind. Before I could say anything, she was already there. Claude, it's really you. Her eyes were red as she rushed over and hugged me. I could feel her tears on my neck, and I awkwardly pushed her away. Right before I boarded the plane, the lawyer had messaged me to say the divorce had been officially filed. Whether Laura agreed or not, the marriage would be annulled within a month. We'd be divorced. So why was she here now? Laura, we've already divorced. You know, after you left. A lot happened. My father, he passed away. I froze, caught completely off guard. I hadn't expected that. I'm so sorry. Back then, we didn't believe you. We thought you were lying. But it turns out the one lying was James. He never went to find any top-tier specialists. My father's condition was ignored the whole time. If we had listened to you and consulted an expert, maybe he'd still be alive. Her voice broke as she crouched down, covering her face, crying uncontrollably. I stood there unmoving, feeling a tightness in my chest. In the month I'd been here, I'd seen countless farewells between life and death. I thought I'd gone numb to it all, but Laura's words stirred something deep inside. After all, in the beginning, my father-in-law had been kind to me. I'm sorry, Claude. I've been looking for you. I wanted to apologize in person. I didn't know you left not to run away, but because you wanted to be a doctor without borders. That's why I came so far to find you. Please, come back with me. This place is too dangerous. I've already lost my father. I can't lose you too. I shook my head. No, I'm not going back. As a doctor without borders, I no longer belong to any one country. Where could I go back to? Unless the war ends and there's nowhere left. In need of our help, only then will I return home. Until then, this vast world, any place in it will be my home. I really know I was wrong, she said. I shouldn't have lied to you, shouldn't have been so self-righteous, and I shouldn't have had children. Now I've paid the price. James is in bad condition. The doctors say he might not last much longer. Claude, how am I supposed to live with the child? You promised you would protect me for life. I pulled my hands out of hers. We're divorced. Now, Laura, how you live your life from here on is your business. I've got things to do. It's dangerous here. You should return home. After speaking, I turned and walked toward the camp. If you don't go back, then I won't either, she called after me. I'll stay here with you. Whenever you're done with your mission, we can go back together. I didn't respond. But just a few steps later, I heard her answering a phone call. It was from a hospital back home. What? James is dead? I'm coming back right now. You all must wait for me. At that moment, 2 bombers flew overhead. The familiar sound of their engines made me instinctively grab Laura and throw her to the ground. Claude, are you crazy? She screamed before her voice was drowned out by a nearby explosion. The ground shook violently, and dust rained down on us. I ignored her shouting, raised my head, and quickly scanned the surroundings. Then I scrambled to my feet. Laura was frozen on the ground, terrified. I pulled her up. We need to get inside for cover. I'd long grown used to life-threatening bombings. They happen daily here. But for her, this was all new. Her lips trembled. Am I going to die here? I pressed my lips together, staying silent for a while before saying, I'll have the team leader arrange for someone to send you back later. Don't come back here again. Her face was covered in dust, her phone clenched tightly in her hand. She didn't answer. Soon, the team leader found a local driver with an old pickup truck to take her to the airport. He gestured for her to get in quickly. Before she left, I slipped a couple of bills into his phone case and told him to make sure she got there safely. Even though our relationship had ended, I couldn't just stand by and watch someone be in danger. Laura still said nothing, seemingly in shock. When I turned around again, she was already getting into the truck. I faintly smiled, as if I'd expected it. Back at the camp, a colleague came over, grinning. Is that beautiful woman your girlfriend? She came all the way here to find you. Looks like true love, huh? Not like my girlfriend. She dumped me as soon as she heard I was going abroad for aid and found some young stud instead. But hey, how come your girlfriend didn't go back with you? I quietly put away my lunchbox and replied casually, she's not my girlfriend. She's my ex-wife. My colleague froze for a moment, then said nothing more. I quickly put it out of my mind. 2 years later, I got the chance to return home unexpectedly. My medical skills had grown, and this time, I wasn't alone. My girlfriend was coming with me. We'd met at the camp. She'd disfigured herself to protect me, and I'd promised to take care of her for the rest of my life. Over time, I'd realized my feelings for her. Maybe it was fate seeing how lonely I'd been and gave me another chance at love. This time, I wouldn't let go. When I arrived at the airport, the former director of the Central Hospital personally came to greet me. He smiled warmly. You've gotten a bit darker and thinner. These past 2 years must have been tough. His ordinary words made my chest tighten. I fought back tears and moved forward to hug him, but just a few steps in, I saw Laura in the distance, holding a little boy's hand. She must have found out I was coming back. In just 2 years, she'd changed, no longer the bright, beautiful woman she once was. Now there was only weariness in her expression. She didn't come closer. I just stood there, expressionless, watching her. My girlfriend noticed and whispered, "Is that your ex-wife? Should we go say hi? It looks like she has a lot to say to you." I shook my head. There's nothing to say. From the moment I walked out of the banquet at the full-month celebration, our paths had diverged. There was nothing left between us. I turned away and got in the car. Not long after we left, I received a message from Laura. Over the past 2 years, she'd sent me several, but since I didn't have a domestic phone number, I'd never received them. This one, though, had just arrived. It contained only 3 words, "I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted it and blocked her. I tossed the broken SIM card out the window, casting away all the past mistakes and misplaced affections along with it.